Hey, hello everybody. How's it going? Everything fine? So, like every Thursday, we are here to read three chapters of About Harry, my fanfiction. Probably you know everything already, but I must repeat every time the same things. And so you will find the chapters on my website, which is www.scribblingaloud.wordpress.com. You can download them for free, and you find me on Instagram, Scribbling Aloud. This work is published as well on some portals like fanfiction portals, Archive of Our Own, and fanfiction.net. So you'll find them there. What else? I guess those are the important things. I should also probably mention that the next week, unfortunately, I need to postpone my live. So it's not going to be on Thursday, but on Friday. I hate this. I hate this because I don't know if you remember or not, but next week is going to be the last two chapters of my second book. So the end, and I need to postpone it because I've got a tenants meeting, an eightful tenants meeting, which is gonna be awful. I'm gonna hate it. It's gonna be a pain, but I must attend to it. So yeah, I have no choice but postpone it. You won't find me on Thursday. I repeat, I'm gonna be here on Friday. I'm sorry about that, but yeah, as I said, I have no choice. um since we are speaking about the end of the book, yes, we are all very excited about this end, but I should also say that, as you can remember, I don't know if you can remember this, but this is a trilogy, so there is going to be a third book, and it's not ready yet. I mean, it's already written, but I'm translating it in Italian, and I'm not even through half of it. And because I really care to have them going both at the same time, I really must finish that before to carry on reading it. And also, I'm still revising it. Because of that reason, the week after the next one, I'm gonna read the fourth chapter, and then there is gonna be a break. I'm kind of thinking to have a month break, so it's gonna be just 1 month, but we will see about that. I mean, I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to finish to translate it in a month, but in case something will change, I'll probably update you either here or on Instagram. So we will see about that. But I really care to read at least the fourth chapter because the third book is gonna be very different from the two others, and I'm very excited about it because, yeah, I had some doubt about the first book. I had some doubt about the second book, but I love the third one. Probably the next week, because there are just two chapters and it's going to be a short live. I'm going to take some time to explain a bit better, but the first chapter will set the tone of the whole book. So just reading that, you'll understand what is going to happen. Well, obviously, it's not a spoiler, but you will get an idea of what is going to happen in the third one. So, yeah, very excited about that. So, tonight we will read chapter 42, 43, and 44. Probably we should do, as usual, a small recap of what happened the last week. We had James and Harry talking. Actually, James kind of threw a tantrum against Harry, and he told him very nasty things. And some of them were actually true, but still they were really painful to Harry, especially because he told him he hates him. That is not true, but still, I guess it's still really painful to hear it from a father to a son. And because of that, Harry decided to be open with them. And for the first time, he told them about his past. So he recounted everything it happened to him in the 7 books. But obviously, um, as the boys always thought, his past has been very adventurous and fun, which is not the case. So he opened up, but at the same time, he kind of made them understand how unhappy his life had been. So, in these chapters about to come, we will find out if his effort paid off. So, yeah, I guess that without any further ado, we can start. Let me get a sip of tea. Okay, chapter 42. Happy birthday. The embarrassing but necessary conversation had taken place, and the dinner that followed had been strangely different from all the others since the kids were back from Hogwarts. James wasn't scolding anymore. He was actually communicating. Harry was aware that the Sark was going to return sooner or later, being James only at the beginning of that dark time called adolescence, and knowing that just an afternoon conversation hadn't solved all the issues. But they were on the good path, and he hoped to see the happy change last at least until the end of their holiday. He promised himself to work more on his relationship with James, and a couple of ideas popped in his head. When in bed that night, Harry was resting his hand lazily on Ginny's belly. The baby was unusually quiet, probably already sleeping, and he was taking the chance to update her about the conversation had with James and Albus. When he was done recounting, she smiled serenely and kissed his brow. "You are a good dad, you know," she said. "I'm not sure about that, but I'm trying." He was enjoying Ginny's cuddles while reflecting on how that dreaded day had, in the end, helped him in confronting some unresolved issues. And despite the grief, when thinking about Lily was still there and it would always have been there, perhaps he had found it a place inside him where to keep it, not repressed and imprisoned, but free to surface when necessary. "I think I'd like to invite somebody over tomorrow if you don't mind," he said to her, who was caressing his hair. "Of course I don't mind. I'm glad you changed your mind." "I don't want to fuss though. Don't trouble yourself with anything. Just something simple." She nodded. "Who do you want to invite?" "Hermione, as one." The caresses stiffened and slowly stopped. It was his turn now. He reached for her, returning what she had received until a moment before. "Jenny, I know what you think, but I assure you we can be only mates. On her part too. She's important to me. You have plenty of friends. I don't. And it's very difficult for me to make new ones, if not impossible. I need her friendship." She didn't reply, but Harry could still sense some sourness. Therefore, he went on. "You are more important though. So if you'll ask me to sever completely my contact with her, I'll do it. Or at least I'll try. But I hope you won't." "I wouldn't dream to urge you anything of the kind." Harry decided to overlook the fact that she had indeed received from her an implicit unspoken order in that direction only a few days before. She continued, a bit grumpily. "I just don't think you are doing her a favor keeping so close. That's all." Harry sighed. "I wondered that much. But then, it would have continued the same if she wouldn't have revealed what she did, don't you think? And then she'll be gone again in a month anyway." The last sentence was said with some dejection, and Ginny, detecting it, got closer to him. Who else do you want to invite? She asked, snuggling up under his arm. Harry shrugged his shoulders. Dunno. Perhaps Ted and George. You can decide, but not too many people. All right. It's bank holiday anyway. They will all be home. They were silent for some time while exchanging tenderness. An owl could be heard hooting softly from the outside. This bed is huge, Harry said after a bit, stretching his legs in it. It's a king size, Ginny replied sleepily. Why did you pick a king size for them? What's the point since they don't use it? I believe they slept in it up a few days ago. That's exactly what I meant. If it has to be used just to sleep, it's a wasted bed. Ginny chuckled. Perhaps they did use it some other ways too. Harry raised an eyebrow skeptical. I seriously doubt it. If Ron would have put a bit more effort in the quarter, perhaps Hermione wouldn't have shifted their attention elsewhere. Ginny sat bolt upright on her elbow, scandalized, slapping him playfully. Harry! That was nasty and so shallow! Harry burst out laughing, defending himself from her attack. I was only joking. He was not funny, she said, undermining her assertion with a repressed snigger. I think somebody should use this bed for something more than sleeping, though. Don't you think? Such a shame otherwise, he said, sitting up too, and started to kiss her neck while sliding his hand under her nightshirt. Harry, it's a bit late. We should sleep. What time is it? Harry looked fleetingly to the clock on the bedside table. 10 past midnight, he said, reverting immediately to his previous occupation. A smile spread on Ginny's face. She took his face in her hands and kissed him sweetly. Happy birthday, baby. Harry smiled, and returning that kiss, he felt exactly so. Happy. Okay, my dear. That was the end of chapter 42. I hope you like it. It was a bit sweeter than the other chapters we had up to now. But, well, I think it was needed, like something a bit on this tone, lovely tone, sweet, and caresses and cuddle after all the turmoil we had with like Lily's birthday and James' tantrum. By the way, I'm sorry for my English. I know I apologize in every live and I do it again. I know sometimes I stumble with words and I say things wrong. I kind of think anyway, no English people listen to that, but only Italian. I anyway hope so. If there are any English people listening, I'm truly sorry. But I remind everybody that in my life I never speak English because I do a job where I speak only Italian all the time. So I read a lot in English, I watch a lot of movies in English, I write in English, but when I must speak it, sometimes I struggle just because I never do it. So when I must do it, sometimes I cannot find word. But to be truly honest, that happens to me in Italian too. So if you should happen to listen to the Italian lives, they are actually just the same. I stumble on words, I cannot find words. I'm not like I don't speak a grammatically correct Italian either, unfortunately, because I read so much in English and not much in Italian. In the end, I kind of have this problem of communication. I cannot speak a proper English, but I cannot speak a proper Italian either. I'm sorry about that. I know I apologize every time, but sometimes I think it's necessary. So, yeah, you are aware of my linguistic problems. So I hope you liked my chapter. It was a short one. I wanted to put something nice and fun, just to uplift our spirit. So we can just keep going with chapter 43, which is called It's Just Family. The next day, after a good night's sleep, Harry waked up, rested, and in a good mood. A bit of sun could be seen time to time peeping between the clouds. The rain had stopped completely to fall. Ginny was not in bed, probably scurrying around the house in various occupations she deemed indispensable when there was somebody coming over. And Harry had always considered it only an unnecessary hassle. Despite she wasn't there, however, she had left on the bedside table a cup of coffee, a present, and a card. The coffee was on the cold side already. He had definitely overslept, judging by the light outside. But he took the cup lazily, resting his back against the wall. He sipped it, eyeing the box and the card. He took the card. It was a white square of thick paper, and in a graceful calligraphy there was written, "Happy birthday, my love. This year has been tough and difficult, and there had been moments when I truly thought I just couldn't bear it. I just couldn't bear it. But every time that happened, I found you on my side. Thank you for being always there whenever I need. Thank you for the sustain and the tenderness. Thank you for being always the amazing man I married 17 years ago. You surprise me every day with your strength, courage, and loyalty. And despite you are not perfect, as I'm not either, of one thing I'm sure, you are perfect for me. I'm grateful every day that you choose me, and I've never loved you more than I love you now. Many happy returns, and I truly hope that together we will make them so. Yours forever, Ginny." Harry smiled, a warm feeling expanding in him, as always when he received these kind of words from Ginny. She wasn't a person that indulged very often in these effusions, which made it even more special when she did. He took the light and flat box, wondering about the content. There was just a single picture inside. It was he and Ginny at Hogwarts in their sixth year. They were under that very tree where he and Hermione were sitting not many days before. Harry had a bit of annoyed smirk while nodding at the camera. Ginny, sitting on his side, was nudging him in the chest, entreating him to smile. Harry, looking at the picture, Harry looked at the picture, the warm feeling expanding a bit more. He didn't have many images of his youth, virtually none of his childhood, only one of when he was I'm sorry, only one of when he was one found in 12 Grimmauld Place, and then only a few of his Hogwarts days. It was a nice discovery. Ginny was in the kitchen cooking. He approached her. He approached her and, hugging her from behind, whispered their thanks in her ear. "Where did you find the picture?" he asked. "Dennis Cravey. He discovered it between his brother things moving some boxes. When he found out our address, he sent it to us. I didn't tell you because I wanted to make you a surprise," she said, stirring some gravy in a pan. He remembered with a pang the poor Colin Creevy died too young in the Hogwarts battle, another victim that waited on his shoulders. He was always getting pictures of Harry. He never enjoyed it much back then, but now, so many years later, he was glad that one had been taken. He felt touched as well. It could have been sold to any magazine, but instead he has sent it to them. Harry promised himself to write a note of thanks. A nice surprise indeed. Thank you for the card too. Very sweet. But I'm afraid, despite I like to believe the opposite, it is you who chose me, not the other way around. He said, his chin resting on her shoulder, his fingers interlinked on her tummy. Now, give me a kiss, he entreated her. She turned from the stove, laughing softly, and pecked his lip tenderly. A sweet embrace followed, and feeling the lump that had been separating them for already a few months, he said, I can't wait to be able to hug you properly. She simpered. No long now, barely 2 months. And returning back to the stove, why don't you go to have a run? If you go in the wilderness, you should be able to avoid people. He was more than willing to follow the advice, and, with it, he hoped to start his plan to bond more with James. After he got ready, he looked for him in his room. He was doing his homework listlessly. Wear some sweatpants and a t-shirt. We are going to have a run. He addressed him. James was all amazement. Me? With you? Harry laughed. Yes, you, with me. Come on, I'll wait for you outside. A few minutes later, James caught up with him wearing a tracksuit and some very unsuitable trainers. We will need to get you some proper shoes, Harry remarked after some stretching starting for the wilderness, followed by his son, who inquired about the motive. From now on, I'd like you to come to run with me every day if we manage. He was quiet in there. Being bank holiday, there were only a few people strolling about from the nearby town, but I avoid them quite easily, following the less traveled path. Why? Jane asked, trying to keep up. First of all, because it's important to keep fit. You are not a child any longer. The moment is come to train you up. I'll teach you some workout and I'd like you to do it even when you'll be back at Hogwarts. And reflecting on it, he decided to elucidate him on his hope for his future. And also because you are very talented in defense against the dark art, and I believe you could make a great hour. I'll train you for it. If you agree, notwithstanding that if you decide to pursue another career, it's fine by me. James was silent, struck by his words. Do you really believe it? He asked him no in the end. Of course I do. Otherwise I wouldn't have said. So then I'd like you to train me. It would be great to be an hour. Brilliant. You'll take your one tomorrow too, then, and I'll teach you as well something more advanced than what you are doing in school. James could barely contain his glee to this new development. I've always hoped to be talented enough for that, but I thought I wasn't, he said, starting to pant slightly. Harry, noticing it, slowed down. Why so? Because, everybody said you were a top student and everything, and it didn't seem to me I was so good after all. I cannot even cast a Patronus, he said, mortified. James, stop believing whatever people say about me. Most of it's only rubbish. They don't even know me. But for defense against the dark art, I was a very mediocre student. You are getting much better marks than mine at your age. Do I? He asked, eager. You definitely do. And anyway, for what it concerns the Patronus, most wizards never get bothered to apprend it, or if they do, it's later in the years. I had to learn it just because the effect the mentor said on me. Nothing more than that. It is not that important. With probability, you'll never meet the mentor in your life. Nevertheless, I'll teach it to you at the first chance we get, if you want. And again, he found himself wondering what was going to be the shape of his Patronus. What's gonna be the happy thought that will trigger it? He mentioned the necessity of finding it so to be prepared when the moment would come, and James became thoughtful and also breathless. Realizing it, Harry stopped running, continuing to a fast walk. And as well, I would like you to join me and Aunt Hermione in our search to save the house. You can be of help, and it will be a way to take responsibilities for your foolishness. James nodded, ashamed, walking side by side to Harry. He was silent for some minutes, and then, unasked, started to open up about this girl that had made him crazy enough to behave so stupidly. He revealed to Harry what, thanks to the eavesdropping and the letter, he knew already. How this girl was the prettiest of her year, how she was using him to aggrandize herself, but how much he liked her, and how he hoped that one day she would realize she liked him for what he really was. Harry sighed, the conviction that it would have been better to move somewhere else other than England getting stronger. His sons were only going to have distorted relationship as he had, with a serious risk to undermine their self-esteem, or, on the opposite side, to boost it unreasonably. It is true he had decided not to interfere when reading Bianca's letter, with the conviction that James had to experience on his skin and decide for himself. But now, after his confession, seeing his dejection and mortification over a silly, selfish girl, he couldn't contain himself. Chuck her! Chuck this naughty brat! He intervened. No matter how pretty she isn't the only one. James raised his eyes to him, surprised by this advice. It's true that probably it's not gonna be easy for you to find somebody that likes you for yourself, he continued hesitantly, sorry to reveal this truth that James started to find out already. But you will, eventually, he continued with more assurance. You deserve it. And if you don't, thank God there are always muggles who have no idea whatsoever who you are. They wouldn't believe it if you explain, and they don't give a damn anyway, he concluded, while James was sniggering. Now, back to work. And that being said, Harry made James completely forget about the unworthy brat in his fourth training. When getting back, a couple of hours later, they heard some cheerful talk coming from the garden. It was lunchtime, and whoever Ginny had invited was already there, getting profit of the few rays of sunshine that were making way between the clouds. Her roar of happy birthday deafened and welcomed him. Everybody was there. Arthur and Molly, Bill with Fleur, Charlie with his family who got there only the morning, Percy with his wife and his children, George, Ted and Victoire, Hermione with Rose and Hugo, and Luna with Stella. Everybody was there, thrilling, shouting for him to join. George gave him a glass of meat, Molly hugged and kissed him, Arthur patted him on the shoulder. Everybody was talking animatedly, filling his arms with presents. The table was covered with dishes of food, kids were running back and forth, and Ginny, round and lovely, beautiful in a light summer dress, approached him beaming. Didn't I say no fuss and not too many people? He whispered in a mocking anger in her pretty ear. She tittered gaily. This is not fuss, and not too many people, she cooed in her ear. In his ear. It's just family. He smiled, and not finding anything to say against that, he joined the Weasley family, his family, in celebrating his birthday, as many times in the past, and, as he hoped, many in the future. Did you like it? That was another sweetie chapter. I really wanted to have him a bit serene, celebrating his birthday nicely with his wife and his children and his Weasley family. I really wanted to have him some good time, to have I'm sorry, to have a bit of good time with the people he loves. Deserve it for Harry. He might be a bit damp and not always like very clever, but he's a guy. He deserves some good time for him. So I guess we can carry on with the last chapter of tonight, which is chapter 44, and it's called Regina. This is the chapter that has been very difficult for me to write, and as soon as I finish it, I'll tell you why. Ooh, and by the way, I forgot. I mentioned in the last chapter I read about Percy and his family. I really wanted to describe it a little bit, to introduce Percy somehow in this book, but I couldn't. I mean, I didn't have the chance. I really had it all in my mind, but I didn't have the opportunity to put him inside. He's gonna appear only briefly in the third book, but very, very briefly, and we are not really gonna say anything about his family. And I'm sorry for that because I had it all planned, and I kind of thought I say this in the Italian version in the Italian version too, but I imagined his wife like totally opposite of him. I imagined her like a bit of a hippie, so very chill out and chaotic person and super relaxed. The exact opposite of Harry of Percy, and I was so excited about this, and I really wanted to have some scene in which they were interacting together, but I didn't have the chance, unfortunately. So I'll tell it now as a fun fact. So yeah, I guess we can carry on with chapter 44. The plan was an easy one, easy to explain, but very difficult to accomplish. The idea was exactly what Regina had suggested. He had shared with Hermione at the beginning and with James and Ginny later. He had recounted them about their conversation. The house was going to be moved in its entirety. They were living in a terrace place, and what they would try to do was to move it 2 or 3 apartments further down the street, squeezing it amid the already existing ones. It was going to be extremely tricky. The houses in the street were all inhabited by muggles. Therefore, it was something that needed to be done at night and taking all the necessary precaution for them not to realize. Harry and Hermione had memorized all the many and complicated spells necessary for the task, and, together with James, they had practiced them truly. Jenny had agreed in allowing James doing magic in this particular occasion in accord with Harry about the necessity of teaching him to take responsibilities for his wrongdoing, and with the added motive to regain back his beloved room, since he was now occupying Rose one, he had worked extra hard in it. Their flat needed to be mapped thoroughly, and charms had to be casted in every room to every single wall, window, door, and fireplace. Not a spot could be overlooked. It was already days they were working on it, helped occasionally by very keen Rose and Albus, enchanted by the possibility of breaking Hogwarts rule for the easiest task. That night, it was going to be the night chosen for the experiment. They had picked a moonless one, and Hermione had brought with her the illuminator. Ginny was there too. She had casted some anti-muggle spells to keep them as much as possible away from the street. He was very silent. Some of the families living in the street were enjoying holidays elsewhere, and the ones still in London were sleeping. Only occasionally a car engine could be heard rumbling in an herby road. Harry was keeping his position in front of their place, concentrated on the task ahead. James was standing on his side. Hermione and Ginny were a few feet farther down the street in front of the spot chosen for the house to be moved. They were both tracing some lines on the pavement with their wands, murmuring incantations. Brief flash of lights could be seen alternatively gushing from the tips. In the meanwhile, Ginny's spells were working the trick. The street was deserted, no cars in view. Street lights were illuminating dimly the surrounding, but there was no sign of life besides them. When they were done with their spells casting, Hermione nodded to Harry, and a second later, one by one, all the lights in the street were off, caught by the illuminator. The street had been engulfed in darkness, and nothing could be seen beside the blue faltering light behind the house curtain coming from a television salon. Harry was ready. He started to mumble the incantation learned from the architectural book, pointing his wand toward the house. A thin red gossamer sprouted, enveloping the wall of the building in a spiderweb of ramification. It had then started to shrink slowly, as if the ones beside were squeezing it on both sides. Seeing it, James murmured, "Lumus!" And as soon as his wand ignited, he waved it in Hermione and Ginny's direction, who, on the alert, started to pronounce their part of the spells aiming to the junction of the two houses. Harry didn't stop his flow of incantation until the house hadn't disappeared completely, as if he had never been there. James had already run down the street toward Ginny and Hermione to check the progression of the spells on their part. The house had slowly started to push its way between the others, moving them aside, and not much later it was there in its entirety. Perfect, as it has always used to be. James exclaimed a loud jubilation, immediately shushed by Ginny. Harry didn't lose a second, and casted a powerful Fidelius charm on it. Once that was done, they looked at each other grinning. James ran immediately inside, and after Hermione had put back all the lights in the street and Ginny had removed all the anti-muggle spells, they all followed, Harry keeping a beaming Ginny under his arm. They started to chat animatedly when inside, exulted by the success of their difficult enterprise. James was running from room to room to make sure everything was in order, and Ginny went to the kitchen to prepare tea for everybody, unable to drop a relieved smile, happy to be back in the cherished home. They were all sitting at the kitchen table, and Harry was thanking Hermione again when they heard a loud shriek coming from upstairs. They stopped talking and looked at each other smirking, knowing exactly the reason for the shriek. 2 seconds later, they heard some thumping down the stairs, and James, with a bewildered face, entered the room, balancing on his arm a beautiful cream-colored barn owl. He only managed to stutter. His face flushed with emotion. "Easy!" Harry completed the sentence for him. "Yes, it is for you. To be used with discretion, because now you know what is at stake." James nodded, still speechless, admiring the owl pecking affectionately at his sleeve. And, after a few moments, he raised his eyes from the owl to them. But instead of the thanks they were all expecting, he looked straight into his father's eyes and said, quite simply but feelingly, "I'm sorry." Harry smiled, touched. It had taken some time, but those felt apologies he had hoped to hear many weeks before had finally arrived. His words and efforts hadn't been wasted. He realized now it had been foolish of him to expect them when he did, but it was right to hear them now. He had let his son behind the barrier he had built to protect himself and them, and thanks to that, James had finally got to know him as he had never been allowed to do before. "It's all right," he answered, going and putting an arm around his shoulders. "What would you like to call your owl?" "Is it a female or a male?" "Female." James observed the owl that was smoothing her feathers quite showily, pondering. Then a sudden mischievous grin spread on his face. "I think we should call her Regina," he proclaimed. They all burst out laughing, and between the amusement, Harry stammered. and Regina it will be. And that's the end of chapter 44. We are kind of putting back all the pieces together to conclude the book. And yeah, as I say, the next week we are going to have the last two chapters. I never thought I would get to this point, I must be honest with you. When I wrote this fan fiction, because it was a fan fiction and I knew I couldn't do anything with it, I never thought I would share it with anybody. Obviously, I shared it with my close friends. They are all Harry Potter nerds, so some of them they read it with pleasure. But I thought that was gonna pretty much it. And then I discovered that there are some portals for fan fiction, and I opened my YouTube channel. So I thought, why not? Let's read it. But honestly, I'm not a person that manage to finish what starts. So yeah, I thought, okay, I'm gonna do it. But for sure, at one point, I'm gonna be fed up with it, or I'll feel very unsure and I'll stop it, or whatever. So I thought I was gonna start it, but never finish it. So I'm very proud of myself that despite everything, despite I'm not very good with English, despite my channel is a small one and I don't put any effort to make it grow. Despite everything, I'm very proud that I got to this point, that there are some people that are actually enjoying it. And I think it has been a very good idea of mine. And I really hope I'll manage to get through the end of it and read the third one too eventually. So, well, what else? I thank you all to have been here, and I'll see you next week. As I said, it's gonna be on Friday, and yeah, I guess that's all. And I wish you good night. Good night, everybody.